Northeasterners are widely viewed as rude and uptight and always in a hurry, and smart, or at least they think they're smart, and they let you know it too. There's a big rivalry between people in this part of the country. Many New Yorkers think they live in the best place on earth. New Jersey hates New York. Massachusetts hates everyone. Connecticut feels like they're squished in between a bunch of idiots. And do Delaware and Rhode Island ever get any respect? We're going to use data and some controversial metrics to rank these states from worst to best. In the end, there will be no doubt which state has bragging rights and which ones need to back the F up. Okay, so this should be fun. We're going to rank the states in the Northeast. Now, in order to do so, we need two things: a list of states and some criteria. We're going to use these as our 11 states. These can be considered part of the Northeast. In terms of criteria, we're going to use everything from, of course, cost of living and quality of life and crime, but we're also going to use some stereotypes, like which Northeastern states have the worst roads and which ones have the most blizzards, and of course, which ones are the smartest, because everybody in the Northeast, well, they're a bunch of know-it-alls. Let's get going, shall we? Now step right up and let's see who wins in a big old Northeast fight. We're gonna match these states all up to see which one's alright. Here we are in Baltimore. This is widely perceived as the most dangerous city in this part of the country. But not all of Baltimore is like this, and certainly Maryland has many desirable locations. And much of the Northeast is more peaceful and quiet, like this area in rural New Hampshire. Let's begin our analysis with crime. Which Northeastern states have the worst crime and which ones are the safest? Well, that's pretty easy. Look, I have a map. And wowzers! Look at the dark blue, which means safe. Most of the upper New England area is very safe. They sweep the top three, actually. Surprisingly, maybe, Delaware ranks as the most dangerous place in the Northeast, mostly because of Wilmington, which is a hood in many areas. You might also be surprised to see that New Jersey is the fourth safest state in the country. Interesting. But we can use these rankings to put together our first score. As you can see, Delaware gets 1 point because it's the most dangerous. New Hampshire gets 11 points because it's the safest out of 11 states. The lower the score, the worse the state. Now, I could rank them best to worst, but you people are sick and you want to see everything shown in a negative light. Now let's move on to a Northeast stereotype. Many folks up here are concerned with money, people. They take pride in earning money, being fiscally responsible, and they complain about taxes a lot, but more on that in a minute. It should be pretty easy to rank these states based on how much money each state has overall. We'll just use the census to see which folks have the highest annual salaries. And for those of you Northeasterners who think I'm being shallow, well, then stop using money as a status symbol. I mean, just saying. Here we go. This chart here gives Maryland some bragging rights. Households here average just under $82,000 a year annually, which is actually the highest amount in the country. And New Jersey and Massachusetts aren't too far behind either. The poorest Northeastern state is Maine. But outside of Maine, 10 of our 11 Northeast states rank in the top 15 overall in the nation for family wealth. Connecticut used to be the richest state, but folks are leaving this state because of taxes. And speaking of taxes, let's see which state has the highest taxes. Just because you bring in the dough doesn't mean you get to keep it all, right? It's pretty easy to see which states up here pay the most in taxes every year. And just like our previous chart, it's pretty clear that not only do these states earn the most money, they pay by far the most in taxes in the country too. This part of the country has 7 states in the top 11 for tax burdens. So sad, so sad. New Yorkers have a lot to complain about. Their tax burden's the highest in the whole country at 12.2%. And with all the drama involving the rioting and the whole COVID thing happening in New York City, you might see these go up even higher too, folks. Maine's the poorest state up here, but they pay the 4th highest taxes of all states. The states with the smallest tax burdens are Delaware and New Hampshire. Delaware has the country's 4th lowest property taxes, and New Hampshire's income tax is basically zero. And for everyone in Massachusetts who complains about all the taxes and they call your state Taxachusetts, you don't have a lot to complain about. You have the 7th lowest taxes of all New England states, and you're just about average nationwide. So shut up! So we've had another shift. After our first 3 categories, New York is the worst state. Haha, no surprises there. And New Hampshire is the best state in the Northeast so far. Now, a lot of the Northeast is known for having great food, whether it's the seafood in places like Rhode Island and Massachusetts, or the lobster in Maine, or Pennsylvania's cheesesteaks, or the unlimited options of New York City, but Which one has the worst food and which one has the best food? Well, this is a little subjective, but Food Network is totally reputable, right? Since they talk about food all day long over there. So we went with this rundown of each state's food rankings. As it turns out, New York has the best food and Delaware has the worst food. That makes sense to me. Kinda. Mostly. Wait, New Hampshire doesn't have good food? I mean, they call it the Arkansas of New England for a reason, and it looks like all that possum pie they eat up there is a detriment, people. But even after ranking last for food, New Hampshire is still the best state so far. Delaware and Rhode Island are tied as the worst states in the region. Poor Delaware and Rhode Island. Now, earlier we mentioned that one stereotype of Northeasterners is that they're opinionated, harsh, direct, and frankly rude. I don't have the budget to go and ask everybody up there what they think of my YouTube channel, but I'm sure many would tell me I'm an idiot. But we can look at polling, a somewhat reputable travel company, which states are friendly and which states are downright rude. And we have the results here, people. Okay, this isn't a surprise. New York is deemed not only the rudest state in this region, but in the whole country. Now, I've been there before, and I found most New Yorkers were direct, but somewhat pleasant. Other highly rude states up here include Delaware. Delaware? Massachusetts, New Jersey, New Hampshire. Man, most of the rudest states in the whole country are up here. What does that say? The nicest state of all is Minnesota, but in terms of the states we're talking about, it's Pennsylvania. That's a little surprising, but their state motto is, "You've got a friend in Pennsylvania," so I guess they mean it. Good for you, Pennsylvania. Here are the final mean to nice New England states. This result's going to certainly push New York back into the top spot as the worst state to live in the Northeast. What do you think about that, lady? Living in the Northeast means plenty of blizzards, people, and just bad weather in general. It's actually pretty dreary for many long months up here. For this metric, we're going to look at cloud cover and snowfall. For cloudiest states, it isn't even close. Vermont only has 58 days of sun a year on average, with New York being right behind. Maryland's the sunniest state. In terms of snowfall, Maine, Vermont, and New Hampshire all rank in the top 3 in the whole nation for average snowfall every year. Maryland and Delaware are tiny, so they don't get a lot of snowfall either, because there's less land on which snow can fall. But overall, the states with the worst weather in the Northeast are as follows. Maryland has the best weather in the Northeast, followed by Delaware. Vermont and New York have the worst weather.
I would never live in a state with so much snow and clouds, especially if I have to pay taxes.
Well, little Mappy kid, that's a good point. Mappy taught you well, and that's why so many people are moving away from this region of our country. Of course, another knock on the Northeast is the sheer number of people and the traffic. While many states up here are wide open, many are just packed in with people. Which states have the highest population densities and which have the worst traffic? Of course, New Jersey's the most crowded. It has the highest population density in the country, where there are 1,200 people per square mile. I mean, my God. Rhode Island is pretty small, but it's packed in there. Most of the Northeast is pretty packed, actually. The states with the least number of people per square mile in this region are Maine and Vermont, which is pretty easy to see when you visit Maine and Vermont. This somewhat overwhelming chart shows us which states have the worst traffic. New York, Pennsylvania, and New Jersey are bad. Vermont and Rhode Island are not. So we have our too crowded and too much traffic final numbers, and they are as follows. To no surprise, New Jersey has it the worst, followed by Massachusetts and New York. Looking good up there in Vermont and in Maine, too. In a second, we're going to show you an update of all the states, but not before we go through sports, people. Perhaps the biggest Northeast stereotype of all. Of course, sports is something to brag about in each of these states. Most men up here live and die by their sports teams. But some states don't have any sports teams, so they're going to do badly in this one. To measure this one, we're just going to add up the most sports titles for each state. Since Maine, Vermont, New Hampshire, Delaware, Rhode Island, and Connecticut don't have any actual sports teams, sorry, Hartford Whaler fans, those states get a big 0 in this category. The other states can compete though, and if you measure the total number of sports titles by state, you can see that New York has the most sports titles, mostly because the Yankees won like 38 World Series. Massachusetts isn't too far behind with 50 world titles, 17 of those because of the Celtics. Pennsylvania's had 43. From what? Looks like Pittsburgh and Philadelphia have combined for 39 world titles, but I don't know where the other 4 came from. And New Jersey has had 4. That's not very many. Even Maryland has 14. Since we're talking about sports, this would be a good time to look at our standings, shall we? Right now, New York is the worst state, even worse than Delaware. But Maryland is the best state so far, and it's not even close. Damn! Okay, so which state has the worst roads? Rhode Island has the worst roads in this country, which is probably a trivia question you can win some money with. A quarter of the roads in Rhode Island are in pitiful shape, and you'd think that a state with road in their name would have some good roads. New Jersey and Massachusetts also have terrible roads. In fact, 4 of the top 10 worst roads in the country are in this region. Supposedly, Vermont has the best roads, where only 3% of the pavement here is in bad shape. Good for you, Vermont. Okay, so a few more to measure before we can come up with our final rankings. Entertainment, right? Like, which states have the most things to do for fun? Clearly, New York will win this one, but we can use some internet searching to find a previously determined ranking list of states based on entertainment and nightlife. And no, we're not measuring hiking, though I understand that's a thing to do up here. This ranking takes into account previously mentioned metrics, and as I thought, New York is at the top and Pennsylvania is not too far down either. The most boring Northeast states are Delaware and Rhode Island. No surprises there. After our latest rankings, we have a new leader as the worst state in the Northeast, Rhode Island, with Delaware and New York not too far behind, and our best state still remains Maryland. In terms of jobs and opportunities, it's pretty easy to see the states with the highest unemployment rates. Those are going to be inflated due to COVID, but they are what they are, an indication of the amount of work available per each state. Rhode Island has the highest unemployment rate at 12.8%, which is just sad for the folks up there. New York is right behind at 12.5%. Vermont has the region's lowest unemployment rate at 4.8%. So there's a big variation between the states with the strongest workforce and the weakest. And Maryland, which has the Northeast's second lowest unemployment rate, has opened up its lead even more, people. Whoa! We only have 2 more things to measure, intelligence and schools. Because people in the Northeast take pride in being smart. A bunch of know-it-alls up there. In terms of quality of public schools, Massachusetts wins in a landslide, but we knew that already. Their schools are always gabbed about when it comes to school quality and cost per student. New Jersey schools are also solid, but Rhode Island, this might clinch it. You have the worst schools in the Northeast. And when it comes to intelligence, it's very easy to see which state has bragging rights and which ones are real dunces. Massachusetts, again, has the highest IQ at 104.3, which sounds like a rock station channel. New Hampshire and Vermont and Maine are also pretty smart. The dumbest state in the Northeast is Rhode Island, where the IQ doesn't even crack 100. But 5 of the top 10 smartest states in the country are in the Northeast. And this is our final ranking. So there we go. That clinches it. Our final standings, and Rhode Island takes the cake as the worst state in the Northeast. Rhode Island actually got worst in the final 6 categories. So sad, so sad. But LOL at New York, it tied Delaware as the second worst state in the Northeast. That's actually pretty funny. I'm sure there's lots of people in New York that would agree with that. And if we used state governors to break the tie, I think Delaware would win. And look at Maryland though. The second dumbest state overall is still our official winner, according to Nick Johnson, as the best state in the Northeast. And it wasn't even close. And that's with Baltimore as your starting quarterback too. A team effort up there in the old line state. Kind of surprising. To me. Mostly. Okay, so that was fun. Using economic indicators and some data and modern stereotypes, we ranked the Northeastern states. There were probably a few surprises, like who would have thought Maryland would have done so well, right? Anyway, if you live in a great state, great. And if you live in Rhode Island, don't feel so bad. I mean, you could have tied with Delaware, New York. Now step right up and let's see who wins on a big old Northeast fight. We're gonna match these states all up to see which one's alright. These places all like to think that they are all so good and great. By the end of this ranking, there just might be a lot more hate. Be a lot more hate. Yeah! With Rhode Island, New Hampshire too, New Jersey and New York, Connecticut, New Hampshire and Maryland, they're all gonna fight now. Hey guys, if you learned something new about America or what it's like to live in America, great! You should think about subscribing and turning on your notifications. You can also click one of these videos or playlists for more. You can also now buy my songs on iTunes and other formats. Click the link in the description. Thanks for watching. And remember, while we all might have different views, we should all be nice to each other and try to make the U.S. a better place in a positive way.
This is Sage, Nick's manager. This has been a Corner House Entertainment production.